Hello and welcome to week 5 in developmental psych. I mean, we're just moving right along. This is we're in the first trimester of giving birth to your final grade here. Probably a very bad analogy. We're 1/3 of the way through a 15-week class, and here we are talking about middle and late childhood. Probably some of the most fascinating, quick growth things that are going on. Lots of research in this age span because these kids, first, captive audience, they're all in school. Second, they're just fun. There's all kinds of things going on. So this chapter is loaded with all kinds of theories and models of the different things all happening at the same time. A very exciting developmental stage. So you're going to read about all those things, apply them to your life and your work. We have 2 discussions, a quiz, and of course a couple questions to go along with this particular chapter. The first discussion and the second discussion both have to do with the effect on Ericksons identified stage when kids start to go to school. Now here's Ericksons' graphic, and we start over here on the left. We have trust versus mistrust, early child autonomy versus shame and doubt, initiative versus guilt, and now we're in that early school age period of time. And the question at this point is the balance between industry and inferiority. Now let's look at this conceptually. When we think about this, industry versus inferiority, ultimately it's what am I good at and what am I not good at compared to other people. And we recognize this is happening primarily, or at least, fundamentally at this age, not only because of the evolving cognitive features of the child, but because they're going into school and they enter this world of age grades and what achievement levels people should be at, how are they related to each other in the class, grades, all of that stuff starts to really have an impact on their life. So it's not just an ability for an individual to be able to do something, it's how well do they do them when compared to their peers. That's why the opposite one is inferiority. Now, if you're alone on a deserted island, there's no such thing as inferiority. You're the best that's there. It's only in the presence of other people in this new social environment that we see this added dimension of how do you compare. Bronfenbrenner theory talks about this as well, talks about those expanding concentric circles of influence. Now we're looking at peers, schools, and how we relate to those individuals. Now, what we want to ask, what these 2 discussions have you do, is relate to how does school itself impact a child's sense of industry versus inferiority. Already there's been a couple people that have posted talking about errant guidance counselors and people you kind of wonder why they got into education. But at the same time, we can also see that it's an opportunity for people to be able to get the kind of support they need in order to excel at things. Personally, I'm not really against the idea of competition and grades and all of those things, as long as it's in a supportive environment that helps people to maximize what it is that they're good at. So school itself plays a role in determining industry versus inferiority. Now, this is a discussion. You can share your own stories. You can share stories of your children. You can make up stories that are relevant. You can talk about your cousins. You can do all those kinds of things to participate in this first discussion. The next discussion, a little bit more timely, and that is, what did COVID do to this? And what we're looking at a school situation that over the last few years, individuals who were in these early grades were isolated from their peers. Now, the resolution of the idea of what am I good at and how do I compare to others, my relative superiority, inferiority with other people, was skipped. Unless they had the ability to with play groups and stuff like that, but there was a period of time here Now we know that this particular aspect of development, it's not like language development or other aspects of neurological development where there's that critical period. If it doesn't happen, you're really messed up. That's not the case. But it does delay it a little bit until those experiences push upon, until those environmental changes, environmental expectations push and influence development. Those things will not necessarily develop. And we kind of think, I've sort of noted in places that we often think about the tragedy of high school graduates missing their graduation. And certainly that's not something that we would just simply dismiss. But there are some very important developmental things that happen at this age. The second one that we're going to look at is when transition from what is either elementary school or junior high into high school. People who were at that age and missed that regular normal transition into those other grades, those people were impacted by COVID as well. Perhaps in these earlier stages, maybe even more significantly impacted. The saving grace is that young kids are usually very resilient. As soon as they got back together, they started doing the work of industry and inferiority, and the stage happens. And so regardless of barriers, we're going to find a way to do it. But we have these two discussions going on. One is the effect of school itself, your own history and whatnot. And then we have, how do we think COVID might have interrupted this? What things happened to maybe, what observations did you make that maybe people were able to address these kinds of issues through sports or through large family or working with brothers and sisters and whatnot? Those kind of things in order to address the inferiority versus industry stage while we were isolated due to COVID. So again, the pandemic, as much as it's not really over and there's permanent changes that we're going to see coming around by this, it is an immense opportunity to look at these factors and how they're impacted by our social interactions. We've all encountered some of the pain, some of the frustration, and in some cases, some of the joy of that isolation, of being able to focus and maybe working at home or changing job or one of those. There's been challenges, but there's also been opportunities associated with this that have dramatically changed our perspective of work and life. So we're taking a look at how it might have affected these young school-age kids. Now the quiz has you looking, there's a quiz about Piaget's concrete operational thinking, and there's a quiz question about Gardner's intelligence. So let's take a look at these graphics as well, give you a little bit on that. Here we have Piaget's stages. We've covered sensory motor, we've covered pre-operational, and now we're into concrete operational operations. Now these are those internal representations of schemas are now possible, but the ability for the child to manipulate them is limited to concrete experience. I won't go down this particular rabbit hole, but the creation of virtual environments, I believe, is actually going to change that ability. I think kids with concrete operational thinking are going to be able to start thinking about abstract reasoning, which is really a characteristic of formal or operational thinking based on their experiences with 3D interactive environments and potentially virtual environments or the other technology that we have to enhance what we see with graphics and special effects and all of that stuff. It's going to be an interesting study later on to see when the effect of technology on the development of those particular skills. But here we are in stage 3 now, concrete operational thinking, and there's some very, very important characteristics about stage 3. One is the ability to do inductive reasoning. Now this is to be able to see cause-effect relationships. This is different than deductive reasoning. Inductive happens here. Deductive, that's Sherlock Holmes. Inductive reasoning is to be able to see cause-effect relationships. Deductive reasoning is when you eliminate the other potential causes, and as Sherlock Holmes was famous for saying, whatever's left is the truth, no matter what, because you've eliminated all the others. It's a reducing of the other options in order to arrive at the conclusion. It's the same process that goes on with diagnosing, differential diagnosing. Oftentimes doctors are, you don't have that, you don't have that, you don't have that, you don't have that, you must have this. And so that's a lot of what goes on in that. That's informal operationing. Right now we're looking at inductive reasoning within stage 3. The ability to classify objects by numerous divisions, like it could be a book and it can be read and it can be a nonfiction. So one object can have different classifications as opposed to just book. Then we have decentration. This is the opposite of centration. So characteristics of objects can have, again, more than one property. They can be certain tall, they can be certain wide, and we get reversibility and conservation. These are really speaking to the kind of tests that Piaget did that pre-operational kids failed. Now they don't fail those. They can reverse operations, conservation of matter, decentration, all of those are now in there. And of course, seriation, putting things in order by size, putting things in alphabetical order. You know what's one of the greatest things about this stage? Now, kids can clean their own room the way we do as adults, because we need to classify objects and put them together. We need to order those objects in alphabetical order or by size or whatever. Just look around your house. Your knives and forks, they all go together. You don't put the big knives at the little knives. They have a separate place maybe. You know, things have their place. You don't, well, maybe some of you do, but I don't. I have glasses, you know, the big glasses, the medium glasses, and the small glasses, big plates, medium plates, small plates, bowls, those kind of things. That's projections of that ability to classify objects among numerous dimensions, and it allows us to create order. So I'm asking you to talk about that in the quiz. And in the last question of the quiz, I'm asking you to take a look at Gardner's multiple intelligent theory. And Gardner's theory, been around for quite a long time, often misrepresented as styles of learning or styles of intelligence. We all have a degree of all of these. Of course, if we have a particular penchant for words, we might read a lot and we might become good readers, where our brother might not have that particular propensity, but they might be really good at taking pictures. So they have really great visual spatial intelligence. This is a picture of diversity, is what this is that people have a constellation of these. Every one of us has a certain strength. Maybe we're not as good at those things as others. And again, use this not as a prison of what you can and can't do, but of the things you're good at and the things that maybe with extra practice you can become better at. So let's take a look at each one of these really quickly here. We start off with body kinesthetic, this ability to move around, coordination, athletes. People who are good dancers have really good body kinesthetic intelligence. Then we have interpersonal. These are individuals that are good at interacting with other people, high emotional intelligence, the ability to understand what people need, to be able to meet people's needs. You got counselors, some doctors, you know, that have that great ability to interact with other people. We have verbal and linguistic, good readers, good speakers. Those kinds of, many politicians are good verbal and linguistic. Many actors and actresses, I think they all call them actors now. So just many actors, very good at verbal skills. Then we have the mathematicians here, the people that are good at logic. They're good at math. They're good at seeing things in numbers and seeing patterns. Conversely, we have an individual very adept on how nature works. Nature as a complex interaction of factors together. It's sort of that ecological view of one piece interacts with another, having that ability. Then we have intrapersonal, a little hard to see on the slide here, but intrapersonal, it's knowledge of my own emotions and my own needs and my own personality, a good sense of who I am. And being interpersonal intelligence does not mean you have intrapersonal intelligence. Those are different. Then visual spatial, we have people that take really good pictures, they paint, they're artistic. And then finally, musical intelligence, related, kind of opposite here, related to mathematical intelligence, but in the musical world, singers, players, and people who have a high appreciation for music. I'm asking you in this particular quiz for you to outline your status on each one of these, all of them, not just the ones you're good at. Says you're a great dancer, you have a lot of friends, you read a lot of books, math is weak, you don't like going out in nature, you're a city person, you have a pretty good sense of who you are, can't take a picture that doesn't cut off somebody's head, and you play a mean radio, but that's about it. That could be your constellation of who you are, as I'm asking you to represent yourself with each one of these just off the cuff. There's no test for these. I mean, it'd be a multiplicity of tests to be able to actually measure all of these intelligence in the person. These all are coming to bear. Look at we have the concrete operational thinking, we have industry versus inferiority compared to, we have all these pieces of intelligence that are starting to come out all during this stage. This is just 3 of the things that are going on at this wonderful stage of life. So enjoy this chapter. I look forward to seeing the discussions and the answers onto those quizzes, and have a very, very great week.